and or McCartney Green. And we are on chapter 15 of DND number 1, or book number 1, A Healing in Jesus' Name. Eric threw everything he just purchased onto the table, knelt down to Shelley, looking around him in disbelief. What in the world happened? Justin and Jason got the story out in Korean while Eric helped her up, ran her hands under water, examined them to make sure no glass remained, and then bandaged them. Meanwhile, Jason sat in a chair holding a cold towel to his nose, and Justin looked Jason over and spoke in Korean. Broken? Jason cried. Eric smiled. Shelley was horrified. I broke his nose? No, Eric whispered. Justin's just teasing him. Shelley looked sadly at Eric. I don't know how it happened. Everything seemed so real. Eric walked to the refrigerator and opened it to the sound of tinkling glass. See, he pointed inside. No monsters in here. He eyed the mess in surprise. The light bulb, a jar of mayonnaise, a jar of pickles, and a casserole dish had been broken, the contents oozing everywhere. Shelley stood. I'll clean it up, she volunteered. No way, he said. You're going back to bed. I am sleeping for 2 days straight. I not tired. Eric held up some suspicious-looking boxes of herbs. Well, you will be. Shelley giggled. That's Yoda. Eric smiled. He motioned Shelley over to the table where he took out the things he'd just purchased. A nightgown, slippers, robes, some clothing, including a winter coat, sweats, and socks. He pulled at the new sweater he'd left earlier on the bed, now covered with food. Well, that didn't last very long, huh? Sighing, she shook her head and began gathering her new things. I'll go change. By the time she rejoined the men, Eric and Justin had the mess cleaned up and her tea ready. Completely relaxed now that Eric was home, she settled on the couch. She felt comfortable and warm in her new robe and slippers and snuggled up next to Jason. I'm sorry, she whispered in his ear. He put his arm around her. I sure hope you kick like that at your next tournament. What's going on here? Eric asked as he entered, carrying a cup of his famous tea. He sat down next to Shelley and held the cup out to her while she motioned at the TV where the thumbnail for The Princess Bride was clearly visible. What's this? Eric laughed. A deal? Okay. Hand me the remote. I'll put on the movie. You drink. 30 minutes into the movie, Shelley's head lay gently on Eric's lap, her legs sprawled across Jason as she slept. The next morning, Shelley arrived in the kitchen, dressed but with hairbrush in hand. My arms are still sore. I can't reach behind me to put my hair up. Her words were hard to understand, but Eric caught the gist of her predicament. Turning her around, he did his best to gather her hair into a clasp, just as there was a knock at the door. Jason opened the door to find Ricky and had finally made it. Hey, so what did you tell Bree? Ricky sighed, shaking his head. I didn't want to lie, so I told her that a friend of mine had been hurt, and I needed to go offer some support. He shrugged. It's the truth. Yes, but she will see it as lying. She will see it as lying when she finds out that the friend you were talking about was her own mother. He nodded. Well, then she'll just have to understand that honor dictates that Shelley should be the one to make the decision as to when she's told. Is Bree coming back here before she heads back to college? No. A friend will be escorting her back to New York next week. Well, then that works out, doesn't it? He motioned toward the kitchen. There and there. She looks pretty bad, so be prepared. Nodding, Ricky headed in. Ricky! Shelley cried, showing her first spark of enthusiasm in 3 days. He approached slowly and hugged her. What are you doing here? I had to come to make sure you're okay. Where's Ree? She stayed on with some friends. Don't worry, he said quickly. She's safe. I have 2 friends who won't take their eyes off her. She's having a blast. Here you go, Shelley girl, Justin said as he handed her a breakfast protein shake. Obediently, Shelley sat and carefully spooned the shake into her swollen mouth. Ricky watched for a moment before turning away, fury building. Shelley, Eric said softly, now that Ricky's here, I need you to go over with me, with us, exactly what happened. Every detail, everything. She looked from caring face to caring face and then down at her hands as she began to speak. He hurt me. she said softly. Eric breathed deeply. Start from the very beginning. He switched on a voice recorder. I was late, she began. She told them everything that happened, everything she felt, everything she said, and everything he said to her. I know it's hard to believe, but I was actually very brave. All I could think was, what would you want me to do? She looked at him. I wanted so badly for you to be proud of me. I couldn't be more proud of you, Shelley. We all are, Ricky added. Shelley tried to smile. She put her hands to her face and felt it. I think the selling's going down, don't you? Maybe a little, Jason answered. What do you think, Eric? Slightly. No mirrors until next week. New scene. They took Shelley to her home to survey the damage. The blood stain on the carpet in the living room caught everyone's attention immediately. And what finally brought Shelley to tears, though, was finding her brown belt and the cream-colored silk dress that Eric had bought her in Daytona, shredded to pieces on her bed. However, between all four men, they had her cheered, especially when they promised to replace everything that had been ruined, including her entire wardrobe and all of the damaged furniture, and might as well add in a complete renovation, new carpets, new floors, paint, and appliances. Justin stayed to inventory the damage. Ricky and Jason, a wannabe chef, went back to Eric's apartment to start dinner, and Eric took Shelley to the dock for a follow-up appointment. By the time Shelley and Eric arrived home, Jason had their meal prepared. Smells good, Shelley said. Ish I could eat. Jason handed her a mug of beef broth and ushered her to a chair. He then placed a plate on the table holding a piece of bread, applesauce, and a special protein bowl of chocolate pudding. I better get well soon. I already losing weight. I gotta, in that tournament, I gotta get strong. Jason kissed the top of her head. Ooh, got to eat what I ut in rut, ooh. Shelley jumped up and came at Jason with her fists, and Jason cowered, protecting his nose with his hands. Help! Eric laughed. I wouldn't make fun of her if I were you. Justin finally arrived, and what seemed to have become their little family sat at the table to make plans. Okay, so Justin and Jason fly out tonight to take care of their appointments while Ricky stays to help me with bodyguard duties for at least a week, maybe two, Eric clarified. What appointments? Shelley asked. The brothers eyed Eric before speaking. Well, I actually have some court cases, and Jason has some classes he's supposed to attend, Justin answered. He didn't mention that they would also be on an active manhunt. What classes are you taking? Shelley inquired of Jason. Jason smiled. Not taking, teaching. I teach martial arts instructors who will, in turn, be teaching a bunch of Navy brats. I think they call them SEALs, he said with a grin. I didn't realize you worked for the government. Jason chuckled. Yes, well, working for the government is a dirty job, but somebody has to teach those poor boys how to stay alive. He doesn't literally work for the government, Justin added. He's a security consultant. Anyone can hire him to instruct or set up their security department. Anyone who can afford me, Jason laughed. And by the way, Eric, I just landed the mart. Well, now, that doesn't surprise me a bit, Eric said. Jason has many friends in very high places, Justin added for Shelley's benefit, like government friends. Well, look who's talking, Ricky put in. Counselor Lee here breaks bread with every judge in the country. And then there's Dad. I can't believe how many people Dad knows. I'm talking about people in every state, heck, in every country, right up to several of the presidents. Jason laughed. Oh, and poor little Ricky only has every female in the free world hungering after his body. Ricky shuddered. Well, that's a scary thought if you think about it. Yes, well, it's a good thing he knows how to defend himself, Eric jested. You know, Shelley began, there's an awful lot of power sitting right here in this tiny little apartment, she said reverently. Well, let's hope so, Shelley girl, Justin said. Let's hope there's enough power. I'm gonna iss you guys, she pouted. E gonna iss oo too, Jason teased. Shelley raised her eyebrows. He, being a teacher of Navy SEALs, didn't intimidate her, and she dumped the glass of water she was holding over his head and dashed away. Ricky laughed as Jason went after Shelley, but the game to an abrupt halt when Shelley slipped in the water and went crashing to the floor. She sat up slowly. Okay. A short time later, the brothers kissed Shelley goodbye and bid Eric and Ricky farewell, speaking what Shelley assumed was their native language of Korean. She made a face, because they'd been speaking Korean an awful lot lately, and she wondered what it was in particular that they didn't want her to hear. Once the brothers were gone, Eric wrapped his arms around Shelley. I have some business I need to attend to tonight. I don't know how late I'll be, but Ricky will be right here with you, so do you think you'll be okay? Shelley frowned but nodded. He kissed her cheek and left. Come on, Shelley, Ricky prodded, noticing the wistful look on her face. It's late. If you try to get some sleep, he'll be back before you're awake, and if you need anything, I'll be right here on the couch. Agreeing, she headed to Eric's room and tried to sleep, but her eyes just would not close. She missed Eric and realized that she'd become extremely dependent on him since the attack. It was disturbing. She was supposed to be getting strong and independent, yet it felt just like before. A crippling fear, a giant monster, threatened to destroy all she'd been working for. She was walking in circles around the room when she finally grabbed some paper and pen and went to find Ricky. He sat on the couch reading. Sunshine came from his smile as he looked up at her. Can't sleep? Shelley shook her head. Dad left some tea for you, Ricky offered. She shook her head again. Play a game with me, she asked, holding up the paper and pen. What kind of game? He asked. She sat next to him and took his book to use for a writing surface. She drew a gallows to play hangman. Ricky laughed and consented, and they played several rounds before Shelley became bored, and she took the paper and wrote, How's Bree? Oh, she's fine. She's a great skier for a beginner. I left her with some good friends who will take good care of her for the next 2 weeks. Do you think she's safe? Shelley wrote. Yes, I do. Otherwise, I wouldn't have left her. We have some friends outside the ones that I left her with who know the situation and are keeping an eye on her. Does she know what happened? No. When she is told is up to you. If she is told is up to you. Unless the media spills the beans, which, I have to say, is entirely possible, so be forewarned. Shelley thought for a few moments, then wrote, Are you and Bree in love? Ricky quickly looked into Shelley's eyes. He'd rather not have this conversation, but he was cornered. He sighed. Well, there's definitely something there for me. I could very easily fall in love with her. She's a special girl. Like her mom, he added with a smile. But she's not that interested in me. Well, she seemed very interested to me, Shelley wrote. Yes, well, that's a chemistry kind of thing, if you know what I mean. But I want more than that with Bria. I want a real relationship. Shelley's brow furrowed as she tried to understand. And then she wrote, So you're saying that she's attracted to you physically, but she doesn't want a relationship? He shrugged. Well, I guess that about sums it up. She must be crazy. Shelley tapped the pen against her mouth, but stopped when it caused her pain. And she wrote again, I guess you're not used to being turned down. He chuckled, because Shelley had a way of getting right to the heart of things. I guess not, he said. She has other prospects. There's a few guys she's dating regularly, and apparently one in particular. He's a producer at one of the theaters in New York. Shelley wondered why Bree hadn't talked to her about this guy. A producer? How old is this guy? Not sure exactly, but I guess in his late 20s, early 30s. Shelley watched Ricky's face and then wrote, What are you not telling me? He shrugged. I've met him, and I don't like him. Why not? He sighed. He's one of those smooth talker types, like a lot of guys I know in Hollywood. Throws money around, thinks he's a big shot. Bree, she's so young and he's so worldly, it makes her an easy target, and I don't like it. But there's not much I can say to her about him because she thinks I'm speaking out of jealousy. He shrugged, and maybe I am. Look, I don't mean to worry you. I've been up in New York quite a bit keeping an eye on the situation. Shelley squeezed his arm and then wrote, You're a knight in shining armor. Thank you. Oh, believe me, keeping an eye on Bree is my pleasure. Shelley frowned again, then wrote, But you two did date a few times anyway, didn't you? Yes, we did. She looked at him expectantly. When he offered no more, she wrote, So, how did it go? What happened between the two of you? He shook his head. Please tell me. The curiosity is killing me. He sighed, looking into Shelley's eyes. Okay, I'll tell you. Looking away, he tried to gather his thoughts. Hello? I'm just trying to figure out how to say this. He scrubbed his hand over his face. I can't believe I'm going to tell you this, but, yes, we dated several times. And we had a blast, and Bree is great fun. One night when I kissed her goodnight, we became very romantic. He sighed again, shaking his head. Man, this was hard, but his dad says confession is good for the soul. Okay, Shelley wrote, so like... Nope. Confession is good for the soul. Okay, so like I said, we became romantic, and we wanted to take things further. Shelley's eyebrows rose, but he hurried on. I admit it seemed like if we kept kissing, it was going to lead to, well, to what is reserved for marriage. In the heat of the moment, I was surely teetering, and then Bree mentioned something about being the only virgin left in New York City, and she was glad her title was about to come to an end. And I don't know why I was so surprised. I guess I figured she was just so beautiful. Surely she's had a few men. He glanced at Shelley and plowed on. I mean, most people our age are not, we're not usually still virgins. So I'm like, what was I doing? My dad and I, we believe in being in control of our bodies, not just in our martial arts, but in, everything. Shelley nodded. So we don't believe in casual sex, and we don't use women for our own gratification. A sexual relationship is for the sanctity of marriage. Shelley wrote, So you are also a virgin? Ricky turned his eyes heavenward, pleading for help, but he already knew he must be honest and face the consequences of his actions. No, I'm not. I made a mistake. He shook his head. I'm not as wise as my father, or as strong. I knew I was in the wrong, but I did it anyway. Fortunately, God is a loving God and a forgiving God. Shelley wrote, You're a young man. It happens. He shook his head. No excuses. I know right from wrong, which is why I finally came to my senses that night with Bree. It was her talk about being a virgin that sank into my brain, and for that I am grateful. So suddenly, I'm faced with telling her right then, in the middle of a passionate situation, that it won't be happening. I realize that if I don't finish what we started, she's going to be hurt and angry. I mean, there she was, offering herself to me. And if I turn her down, it's going to be a real slap in the face. I mean, I knew she wasn't in love with me, so I had no business letting things get that far. I also knew I had to face my dad, and you, and God again. So I stopped. And boy, was she mad. For 2 weeks, I apologized and sent flowers and begged her to understand. I even told her about how much I missed my mom and how lonely it had been with just Dad and me my whole life. I told her how the times I'd spent here with you and Dad and Mark and Joey and her were the happiest times I can remember, and I wasn't willing to throw it away for a moment of pleasure. Shelley's eyes welled with tears as Ricky continued. I explained how she probably took having brothers for granted and how I'd longed for siblings secretly all my life. I told her I was in love with her, but I knew she wasn't in love with me, and if I couldn't have it all, then I wanted her to just let me be her friend. And if I'm to be her friend, then I can't be intimate with her. So she finally forgave you, Shelley wrote. He shrugged. I guess so. She treats me like a good friend now, but there's still underlying tension. Really, though, Mark and Joey are like my little brothers. However, I can't think of Bree as my sister. But you, Shelley, are like my mom. My very young mom, he added. Shelley pressed her fingers to her mouth and placed them on Ricky's cheek. He pressed his hand over hers. But, Ricky said cheerfully, breaking the spell, tonight, Don't think of me as your son." He rose from the couch. "Tonight, my father left me as your protector, with strict instructions for you to go to bed and sleep so your body can heal. So, what can I do to help you accomplish that? Do you need some tea?" She shook her head as she stood. "Okay then," Ricky said as he leaned forward and kissed her forehead. "Good night, Mom," he whispered. New scene. She tried really hard to sleep, but not having any physical exercise in several days and being constantly told to rest was a prescription for insomnia. After an hour of tossing and turning, she kicked the covers off. She probably should have accepted some magic tea. Not wanting to go back out and disturb Ricky, though, she busied herself poking through Eric's dresser drawers. Boring quickly, she moved to the closet. There she found something provoking her curiosity, a small red leather-covered box with oriental lettering neatly engraved in gold across the top. She opened it. In front of her lay a wedding ring, a round locket, and a stack of pictures. She tried on the gold band. It was much too large. A man's ring. She slipped the ring off and placed it neatly away and picked up the locket and opened it. A beautiful, smiling face stared back at her. Anne. This must be Anne. She was beautiful. Shelley frowned. She was so very beautiful. Petite, page boy style black hair, and an angelic face. Shelley closed the locket carefully and put it away. The pictures turned out also to be mostly of Anne. Anne and Eric. Anne pregnant. Anne and Eric again. Anne with new baby Ricky. Anne with an older Ricky. The three of them together. 3 of them and Justin. 3 of them and Jason. Anne in the hospital. And finally, Anne in a bed at a home. Hers and Eric's home, Shelley surmised. Emotions flooded through Shelley. She could feel Eric's and Ricky's pain, but she also felt jealousy. She became angry with herself for being jealous of a dead woman and for going through Eric's personal things, so she carefully replaced the box in the closet. And as she went to close the door, an object on the floor of the closet in the back caught her eye. She reached in and pulled out something rectangular and heavy, wrapped in bath towels. Finally, the mirrors. She was going to be able to see how severe her injuries were. She sat down on the carpet, leaning the terry cloth package carefully against the wall in front of her. Her stomach tensed as she counted to 3, lifted the towel, and peered into the mirror. A hideous, grotesque demon stared back at her. Gasping, her fingers went to her face to see if she truly viewed her own reflection. Her right cheek had a small bandage where she'd been stitched, but that was the least of the problem. The right side of her face was 2 or 3 times larger than the left. There seemed to be no right eye, for it was hidden behind the swollen flesh. She could see the left eye, though. It was blood red. There was no evidence that her eyes had once been brown. Her entire face was blue and purple and green and yellow and pink, and her lips were huge and cracked. "No, oh no," she cried softly. She thought of Anne's beautiful picture, and the tears she'd been trying to control over the past few days came again. She wept silently, looking into the mirror, hypnotized as she watched the tears run down the horrible mask. The bedroom door opening broke her trance, and slowly she looked up to see Eric standing in the threshold. "Oh, Shelley, I asked you not to do this," he said kindly as he knelt and gently took the mirror away. I thought just one little peek. I'm so ugly. It's horrible," she cried. "How can you even stand to look at me?" He pulled her into his arms. "Shelley, you won't look like this forever. It's only been 3 days. I promise in a few weeks you'll hardly be able to tell." She shook her head. "It's so bad. I don't see how I could ever look like me again." "Baby, I promise it'll get better. You will look like you again." Slowly shaking her head, she cried openly, "Oh, I love you, Shelley girl." She wept and shook her head. "No." "Yes," he said softly, gently kissing her forehead. Softly, delicately, like one would kiss a sleeping baby, he kissed her face. She pressed her forehead against his chest. "No," she whispered. "I want to die." "Oh, please don't say that. You can't die and leave me behind. Please don't say that. Shelley, you're a beautiful woman, and you will heal." "No," she cried. Realizing there was no way to convince her right now, he simply held her until she slept. New scene. I'm worried about Shelley. Ricky placed the 50-pound dumbbells back on the rack and used his towel to wipe the sweat from his forehead and turned to face his father. "Something new or same old, same old?" Eric finished loading weights onto the barbell and straddled the bench. He and Ricky felt they needed a release and asked Brian to keep Shelley company while they slipped in a quick workout. She's slipping into a depression. She's listless and spends her time sleeping or staring at the ceiling. She only leaves the bedroom to use the bathroom. She doesn't even come out to eat anymore. That's all I can do to get her to down a protein drink. Ricky circled behind the bench to Spot. "Yeah, when Meg came over to do Shelley's hair, she barely tolerated her. And she wasn't rude or anything. Actually, she was polite to a fault. Still, definitely not her normal, friendly self." He quieted while Eric lay back, lifted the barbell, and pressed out 10. Ricky helped guide the bar back to the stand. And Eric spoke from his prone position. "I phoned Ray Chin." "Your old psych professor?" Eric nodded. "He said I've been doing all the right things, encouraging Shelley to talk about her feelings, giving her space to work things out, but she's slipping further and further away. I can't seem to snap her out of it, and I'm thinking we may have to call in professional help. So I think I'll get Ray to recommend someone in the Atlanta area." "You're a psychologist, Dad." "Yeah, but we need someone who has patient experience and someone not so close to the patient that I can trust." He sighed. "Come on, let's finish up. I'm sure Brian would like to get back to his wife." New scene. Excuse me. By Saturday morning, Eric had arranged for a special bedside consultation with a highly recommended psychiatrist, Dr. Goldstein, who would arrive the next day, mid-morning. By Saturday night, the swelling had gone down a good bit, allowing Shelley to speak and eat much better, yet she wasn't doing much of either. "So, Shelley, do you want to come out and watch some TV with us?" Eric prodded. She didn't answer, only lay on the bed, looking up at the ceiling. "Shelley, it's looking better." She glanced at him but didn't respond. "You know, the boys are coming home in another week. You're going to have to pull out of this." She pulled herself out of her trance long enough to focus on Eric's face. "Please call Robert for me and tell him not to bring them home." "You just finished battling with Robert over them coming home when all this mess hit the news. You want to give up your rights just like that? Those little boys need their mother. Don't you miss them?" When she didn't answer, he started for the door. "Well, I miss them," he said as he left the room. New scene. The piece of Sunday morning came to an abrupt halt with the sound of shattering glass. Both Eric and Ricky raced toward the sound and made it to the bathroom door as Shelley calmly opened it and walked back to the bedroom as if nothing had happened. Eric peered into the bathroom. Shards of glass from the recently replaced mirror covered the sink and countertop. Eric shrugged. "Oh, at least she's not lying passively in bed. I'd rather her show some emotion, even anger." "Well, I don't know if she's angry, Dad, but I do know she's bleeding," Ricky answered, pointing to the carpet. "Aw, hell." Eric grabbed a towel and went to her. She sat on the bed watching the blood run down her arm. Eric took her hand and examined it. Wrapping the towel around her hand, he pulled her up and ushered her to the door. "Rick, it's going to take stitches. If Dr. Goldstein gets here before we get back, ask him to wait." 4 stitches, and an hour and a half later, Eric and Shelley arrived home and were greeted by both Ricky and Dr. Goldstein. Eric felt extremely relieved to have Dr. Goldstein's help. He was a rare bird, a psychiatrist who'd stumbled down the path of a natural healer, and he came highly recommended. However, Shelley showed no interest in an introduction. She said a polite hello and headed straight to bed. A minute later, Eric and the doctor appeared at the bedroom door, and she lay on the bed as usual, staring at the ceiling. Dr. Goldstein entered and placed a kitchen chair by the bed. Eric walked to the other side of the room and leaned against the wall, staying out of Shelley's line of vision. Shelley eyed Dr. Goldstein suspiciously as he sat down and discreetly put a black case on the floor by the bed. "Hello, Miss Adams," he said quietly. "I could have sworn I just said hello to you a moment ago," she answered curtly. "Well, so you did. Do you know who I am?" She sat up and studied him, marking the bag on the floor. "It appears that you're a doctor," she hissed, and then laid back down. "Well, you may as well pick up your little black bag and leave because you're not touching me." "Well, I've no intentions of touching you or leaving," he replied calmly. She glared at him. "What then?" "Just talk." She rolled her eyes. "So talk." Dr. Goldstein smiled. "I guess you're pretty frightened about what happened to you," he began. She shrugged. "What do you feel?" he asked. She was quiet. "Do you think maybe the problem is that you feel a lot of conflicting emotions and you're not exactly sure how you feel?" She glared at him. "Right now, the problem is, I don't want to talk to you." She rose and walked toward the door. Suddenly, Eric was there, blocking her way. "Shelley," Eric pleaded, "please, sit down." "I don't have to stay here," she shot back. Hurt in his eyes, he reasoned with her. "No, you don't. You have your free will. I guess I just assumed that we were in this thing together. I know I'd do anything for you. Won't you consider doing this for me? Just talk to the doctor. Just talk. That's all." With the defeated look that she'd recently mastered, she turned and sat on the end of the bed and eyed the doctor. "I suppose now you're going to tell me all about how I feel," she said sarcastically. Dr. Goldstein smiled. "How about you tell me?" Shelley looked down and shook her head. "I guess you're right. I don't know how I feel." "Well, that's understandable. You've been through a lot, and different emotions will continue to surface. Let's just think about a few. Go back now to fear. Are you afraid?" Shelley looked down at her hands. "I don't think so. I mean, someone's always here with me, so no, I'm not afraid." "What about your children? Eric tells me you don't want to see them. Are you afraid for their safety?" "I didn't say I don't want to see them," Shelley shot back, glaring at Eric. "And no, I'm not afraid for their safety. He wasn't interested in them." Dr. Goldstein nodded. "So, tell me this. If you want to see your children and you feel they're safe, why do you not want them to come home?" he probed. She shook her head. "I don't want them to see me," she whispered. "I understand the children aren't due back for another week. You'll be much better by then." "It's been a whole week and I've seen no improvement," she said. "Well, Eric says there's been a great deal of improvement. He says just a week ago you couldn't even speak. But we'll come back to your condition later. Do you feel anything else?" Shelley shrugged. "What about anger? It seems to me that you're very angry." Shelley's hands closed into fists. I can't talk about this." "Why not?" "Because I'll go crazy," she said, her eyes wide. Dr. Goldstein sat quietly and waited. "Okay, yes. I am angry. I'm so angry. I want to kill someone." Shelley held her fists up. "I want to rip that man apart with my bare hands." "That's a great mother image, huh? I lie here and I try to clear my mind. I try to control it, but I can't. I feel like some caged animal who's wild and unpredictable. Is that what I should bring my kids home to? I'm full of hatred. He hurt me, and he laughed at me, and he made me look like this." Out of pure frustration, she pounded her thighs with her fist. "And is this anger why you broke the mirror today?" Dr. Goldstein asked calmly. She shrugged. "I guess." "Who did you see in the mirror? The man who attacked you?" "No. I saw an ugly, horrible, weak, pitiful woman whom I hate." She slammed her fists on her legs again. And Eric sighed, realizing that any progress he'd made with Shelley since June had been neatly disposed of in a 30-minute expanse of time. "And why is this woman weak?" Dr. Goldstein asked, picking out what he thought was the key word. "Because she let it happen." Shouting now, she went on. "She couldn't think fast enough to get out of it. She's been training extensively for 6 months and never even got in one punch. Not one. Don't you see? He took me down like I was a kitten, like I was nothing. He even said it himself. It was too easy. And now I look like this and I cry all the time and I can't control my emotions and I hate it. I just hate it. And I hate me. Tears came to her eyes, and this time, instead of hitting her thighs, she slapped her hands against her face, yelling at herself, "Stop it!" Eric quickly grabbed her arms and held them down by her side, and she struggled against his strength. "Please, baby," Eric pleaded. "Be her teacher," Dr. Goldstein urged. "I think your guilt is getting in your way." Sighing, Eric nodded. "Shelley, get control of yourself." "Why should I?" she cried. "Because you're hurting yourself, and when you hurt, I hurt." "Is that what you want?" Dr. Goldstein asked. Shelley stilled and slowly shook her head. "Well, no, of course not." She buried her face against Eric's chest, sobbing. I'm sorry, Eric, but it feels like I'm losing my mind." "Shh, no apologies," Eric whispered. "Dr. Goldstein is here to help you. Will you let him do that? For me? Will you talk to him?" Sniffing, she raised her head. I'll talk to him." "That's good, Miss Adams. Stay right here. Eric, let me speak to you outside, please." They walked into the small hallway. "What do you think?" Eric asked. "I think she's having a normal reaction to a severe trauma. I don't think she's suicidal, but I'd like to spend more time with her alone tonight and several more times over the next few weeks. Ray told me all about you and about the Mart and the importance of your situation. So I'll make time, but I need you to bring her to my office." "Well, that will be no problem, and thank you," Eric said. "Good. Now, if you'll excuse us." Eric nodded and joined Ricky on the couch. They sat quietly, both deep in thought, and after a time, Eric's thoughts turned to his son. "Ricky, I want you to know how much I appreciate your help with all this. I owe you so much. When things like this happen, people tend to count their blessings, and I count you as a major one." Ricky smiled. "Back at you, Dad. But you don't owe me anything. I owe you everything. You know, I love Shelley too. She's like a mother to me. I hope that doesn't upset you." Eric was surprised by the statement. "Why would you think that would upset me? Your happiness is my happiness." Ricky shrugged. I thought you might see it as being disloyal to Mom." Eric frowned. "Your mother has left this world, and Shelley is here. I love her, and I'm happy you feel the way you do." Ricky sighed. "Well, it's killing me to see her like this, Dad, so I can't even imagine what it's doing to you." Eric ran his hand through his hair and pulled out the elastic, holding it back. "I don't know, Rick. If I'd only taken action on that dream, if I'd only been there. I pray every day and every night. I ask the Lord to stay close to me, to help me. He gives me a prophetic dream, a warning dream, and I hesitated. I didn't act immediately, and because of that, Shelley is suffering." "Well, Dad, I understand you feeling guilty. I wish you'd been there too. And yet, that's not how James planned it. He waited until he knew she was alone. You got to stop blaming yourself. You always told me that guilt is a useless emotion. Do you not really believe what you taught me?" "I do, of course. I guess some things are easier said than done. Still, there is a difference between guilt and regret, and maybe I'm feeling regret. Guilt is more about wrongdoing, and regret about lack of action. Either way, you're right, Ricky. I'll do away with the guilt or the regret because it's time to move forward. I can't argue with you now anyway. I am so tired I can't think straight." "Well, then I suggest you go to bed for a while," Dr. Goldstein said as he entered the room. Eric stood. "How is she?" "She's calmer, I think. She'll learn how to handle her anger as the bruises and memories fade. However, she's a lot stronger than she gives herself credit. She's simply a person who feels things very deeply." Eric thanked the doctor and saw him out. Ricky pointed to the sofa. "I get the floor tonight. You get the couch. Get some rest, Dad. Sleep now before I kick your butt." "I promise. Let me just check on Shelley first." He stood at the door. Shelley seemed to be sleeping peacefully. Eric grabbed one of her new gowns off the chair and sat down on the bed to wake her gently, but she opened her eyes as soon as he sat. "Hi there," Eric said. "You okay?" Shelley shrugged. "I guess." Are you still mad at me? I wasn't mad at you, only at me, she said softly. Shelley, would you mind if I tell you something? Go ahead. He reached out and stroked her hair. You said James took you down like you were nothing. Well, someone who's been training for a mere 6 months is no match for someone like James. First, he's a giant. And James has been studying ninjutsu for a very long time, and ninjutsu is a deadly art. Ninjutsu, I remember you said you'd teach me one day, so it's one of your skills? Yes. Unfortunately, some people use their skills in dishonorable ways. The thought of using my strength against a defenseless woman is repulsive to me. Shelley moaned at his words. I'm not supposed to be defenseless. You're so impatient. In a few years, you'll be an awesome martial artist. Right now, you're an awesome student. Trust me. With each tournament, you get better, you get stronger, and more confident. He sighed. I hate that you have to miss the New Year's tournament. Shelley sat up. What? Well, you didn't think you were going to fight in 2 weeks, did you? I guess I wasn't thinking at all, she said slowly as she yawned and snuggled back down against the pillow. Do you really think the swelling is going down? She asked sleepily. Yes, I do. Shelley sighed deeply as sleep overtook her. She was so beautiful. Who was? Anne. Her pictures were in your closet. Eric drew a deep breath and pushed emotions aside. Yes, she was. But Shelley, she was no more beautiful than you. Shelley smiled as she dozed. I wish I looked like her, she whispered. Well, I like you just the way you are. 2 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 10. Godly sorrow brings repentance that leads to salvation and leaves no regret, but worldly sorrow brings death. And that is the end of chapter 15.